go ahead and get started here with our board workshop at 6:03. Welcome everyone, and before I get to our Native American land acknowledgement, just wanted to also welcome Hua Nguyen, who is joining our board. Congratulations. And wanted to just congratulate Stephanie Stevens, Donna Barber, and Andrea Valderrama, who's going to join us here in just a moment on their re-election as well. Just really nice to have everyone here, and we are now a majority women of color board, so it's exciting and more representative of our community and lovely to have everyone. So with all that said, we're going to get to our Native American land acknowledgement. So today I would like to acknowledge the people whose land we are gathered on. Present-day Portland is located on the traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Cathlamet, Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia and Willamette rivers. Let us also acknowledge the robust Native community made up of tribal diversity that originates from around the country and whose journeys have brought them to Portland by ways of forced displacement or seeking opportunities. Today, these same communities celebrate their heritage, showing resilience and tenacity that would be greatly admired by their ancestors. Thank you, folks. So with that, Ken, did you want me to pass it on to you, or should I pass it on to Pat to go on?
Really, it goes straight to Pat, but I just want to take 10 seconds here to also congratulate and thank Wa for being here this evening, for her willingness to step up and serve. It is so appreciated and needed, and just want to, again, take an opportunity to recognize you like everyone else is and are. Also, again, Sahara, you did already recognize those who were rerunning or running, whether it was unopposed or posed. Again, just your willingness to step in and serve means so much. We can't do it without your leadership, and I don't know that there's a more important position to hold right now, to be totally honest with you, when you think about school districts and needs of students and families in our community. So thank you all. And why, if there's any questions, just format, just so you know, and for everyone, Jeremy as well, once we kick it off, we're pretty informal, but please don't hesitate to raise your hand. Myself, Lori, others in cabinet. You can also just unmic and say, I have a question. Feel free to do that as well. And then throughout the whole presentation, we just kind of interact back and forth. So there's not really a formal set structure here. So don't hesitate to ask questions along the way, anyone and everyone. So with that said, Sahar, if you don't mind, I'll just hand it over to Pat and we'll go from there. All right, you're up, Pat.
Okay, everybody hears me okay? Yeah, okay. So in, I believe, our last board meeting, I gave you a bond timeline, and I updated it a little bit as I didn't have the awesome grant application date. So that was added in blue. So it goes through some of the activities and things that we need to get done if we're planning on going out for a bond. The training, and we're going to have a little bit of that tonight. We've invited Jeremy Wright to chat with you tonight. I'm going to let him do his introductions here in a minute. But those are the big timelines and deadlines that we're going to need to meet: finalizing that bond project list, selecting a campaign firm, and then getting some of the PAC activities going and polling. And there's a lot of work to be squeezed in by November. So were there any questions on the adjustment to the timeline, or no? Then I'm going to kick it over to Jeremy. I'm going to let him introduce himself. He's with Wright Public Affairs.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. I'm going to have a little presentation. I'm going to share my screen, and I have a little bit about our firm and ourselves. So I'll take that moment to introduce and talk about our work a little more in depth. But thank you for having me tonight. I've had the opportunity to work with a number of school districts around the state, and in fact in East County as well, Reynolds, Gresham Barlow, Centennial. So very excited to see that you guys are interested in going out for a bond. And this is hopefully tonight With this presentation, I'm going to try to walk through what we see as best practices, what we know works for districts. I've come up with a little bit of a timeline based on a November 2021 election using some of Pat's stuff as well. And then we can have a discussion, or, as Ken said, please just, stop me in the middle of it and ask questions as well. Let me share my screen. There we go. Okay, everyone can see my screen? Good, awesome. So just a little bit about us. We've been in Right Public Affairs has been around since 2011. We work primarily nowadays with mostly public agencies and public affairs, public agencies and school districts around the Pacific Northwest. But we've also done a lot of work with nonprofits and businesses and campaigns and other government entities over the last decade. Since as I alluded to, most of our work recently has been helping school districts large and small and local municipalities and park districts help pass bonds. In the last 5 or 6 years, we've passed over 4.88 billion, almost $5 billion in bonds in Oregon. We've worked with, I think the list now is 26 school districts. So we do a lot of work. We work with districts large and small. Here's some of examples of some of the work I wanted to highlight for this group. I've mentioned it a little bit, but we helped pass Reynolds back in 2015 after they had failed a couple times. We're super proud of the work we've done in Gresham-Burlow, passing a $300 million bond back in 2016. It was a huge lift for that community. And we've continued to work with Gresham-Burlow for the last 5 years on their bond program. We've done a lot of work with Portland Public Schools. That always helps with that large number, right? Because it's been 1.2 billion, bonds kind of helps you increase the number. But we also work with small districts all over the state. We love being able to pass bonds and levies in tough places, which typically don't do tax measures. So we love schools, we love school districts, and that's our specialty. Here is just a huge list of folks, and you guys can look at that later. I won't go through all the school districts. So get to a little bit about, when does a bond program begin? So a bond program typically begins after completion of a long-range facilities plan and a thorough assessment of the district's current and future needs. This is generally, about a year and a half out from your target election date. I think one of the things you'll find as I go through this, you're going to be looking at a November 2021 election and looking at some of this. And I think we should have a discussion about that. Because of what I'm going to be presenting here is what we see as best practices and ideal calendar. Doesn't mean you always have to adhere to that calendar. Doesn't mean we haven't won with shorter calendars or longer calendars. Sometimes this process has been 3 to 4 years for some districts. It really depends upon the nature of the needs, where you're at, and all these different variables. But what I'm going to talk about tonight is basically the kind of what we see as the basic best practice calendar. So it begins about a year and a half out after you've done your long range facilities plan. I know you have done that, so that's great. And I had a chance to look at that, and Pat sent that along. So there are 3 phases, basic phases to a bond campaign. Phase 1 is what we like. So we like to break this down into 3 phases, and we like to call this first phase outreach and options. So what is that? That first phase is when you engage the community in the bond development process. This is about telling the story of the district. So who are you? What do you do? Not just about bonds, but getting out there and telling your story as a district. Increasing awareness of the need. Always critical in passing a bond is making sure people understand what you need. There's a direct correlation between support for a bond and all of our polling and awareness of the facilities condition and needs. And then how the bond development process works. So, educating the community about their role in it. In this phase, you want to make sure that the community knows all the options on the table, and you want to make their help in creating a bond program that meets district and community priorities. I can't emphasize this enough that the bond where we see successful bond efforts is when you have a strong, robust bond development process that engages community members at all levels and through typically a bond development committee and then other opportunities for input before you ever go to the ballot, before you even put a bond proposal in front of a school board. that work needs to be done with the community and with a bond development group. That is a way that really creates buy-in and understanding of the process and what you're asking and why. It also helps you as leaders maybe make some changes. You think you want something, but you do one package, and a lot of times you come out on the end with something else because of the process itself through these outreach and options, phase 1. Phase 2, this is when you listen, refine, and finalize. So a bond development group, committee, or whatever you want to call it, bond advisory committee, and then you do community input, and they come together and you come up with a draft package based on your your polling and what you need, what your finances are, and how much you think you can ask for. And then you have to go out and make sure that the community, the larger community, not just your core consumers, is just something they want and they think is a priority for them in their district. And in this phase, you finalize the bond scope and language. You get down to the nitty-gritty of your language to file for election. And this is the part where I always say, this is where you ask for the community's opinion before you ask for their money. Because you're going to be going out for a new money ask, regardless of what level you go to, based on the stuff that Pat sent along to me, pardon me. And so this is the final opportunity to put it out in front. You can listen to feedback from the community and finalize the language and refine it. And then finally, this is the third phase is educate, motivate, inspire. We call it, it's go time. You've placed your bond on the ballot. This is where there's kind of 2 steps to this: educate, motivate, inspire, and pass it. Step 1 is making sure your choir is all on board and is engaged in the community about the bond. What is your choir? Your choir is going to be this group, obviously your leadership. It's going to be your staff. It's your parents. It is folks who are generally engaged with the school district, who are big champions or users of your facilities that they're not students. Then of course your students. And those folks that whole group I always call the choir, and they have to be on board and excited, and then they have to go out and sing. And then you're like most school districts, 75% of the voters in your school district don't have children in your schools. Between 70 and 75 is the typical range for most school districts. So then we have to go out and do our persuasion of those folks. So those are the 3 phases. It's start figuring out what you want, what your overall options are, bring together a bond development group, bring together other community, get it input, then refine and finalize that input and create a package, go out, and then you have to go out and pass it. So I get a little more detail on this so you understand what I'm talking about. And this feeds into the calendar, which we'll have next after these 3 phases. So 1 year to 8 months out is that outreach and options I talked about. So what are some of those things? You finalize your long-range facilities plan, you've done that. Assemble and launch a bond advisory group. Professional analysis of your tax impact at multiple levels. So how much can you go for? How much of an increase? What are those levels? You publicly announce the bond program and process. Hey, we're thinking about this. We want folks to get involved. You retain all your consultants, your architect, your cost estimator, your bond comms and engagement folks. You bond advisory committee, you identify your bond advisory committee, invite them to become part of it, and then you start holding meetings. District leadership, groups start having one-on-one meetings with key communicators, and then you do your first benchmark poll. I saw that you did a poll through Patinkin Research already, which is great, a benchmark poll already. It's great. Ben and I work together on probably 30 polls a year together. So it's he's an excellent pollster, and so you've already done that. So you have a few of these things already checked off. This is great. Some other things you have to do. I've been talking a lot. Do you want me to? Any questions? Okay, I'll keep going. So then the second phase we talk about is about typically 6 to 4 months out from election day. The bond advisory committee finalizes in their draft recommendation and presents it to you, the board. You launch the feedback process. So that's, hey, this is what the bond advisory committee came up with. What do you think? You develop a multi-channel listening process. meaning obviously talking diverse communities, multiple languages, all the different ways you as a district already do that. You engage your campaign, information campaign with core constituencies, like your choir I was talking about. You do a second survey based on what the bond advisory committee came up with. Okay, is this realistic? Is that number we landed on, is that project list realistic and matches what the community wants? And then you have to draft your bond ballot language. And so you have your bond caption and question and title, and you engage bond counsel and a firm like myself and your district communication staff. And we come up and create language, and then we put it in front of you as a board. And the board has to formally adopt that package and then formally place it on the ballot, and direct the district to place it on the ballot. So that's some of the detail in that second phase, which is 6 to 4 months out. And then that go phase is 4 months to election day. So if you were looking at November, we're talking, late July, August. The district launches a robust public information campaign with core constituencies. Those elements of that can include and should include a plan for parent and school leader engagement, a plan for school-specific outreach, a plan for community and culturally specific outreach, a back to school. Because that's when the times you have a lot of parents, non-pandemic obviously, but even in pandemic times with virtual back to school nights, it's got a lot of attention, so you don't want to lose that opportunity. The district should send direct mail. The district create videos telling about the bond, a digital campaign, both paid and regular organic, clear visible collateral at every school, a final 30-day action plan from the district, board member and district leadership. This group goes on the roadshow with your key groups and all, we all know that every community and board, a school district has, your key leadership groups or places where people gather, and you can go and do a 15-minute presentation about the bond. Let me take a pause for a minute, because you see the next bullet point, and then the community PAC effort is launched and is out there engaging the community. What is the difference? Talk about the PAC and the district. So everything I listed up here with my hands circling, all these things here is what the school district can do. We have gotten very good at making sure that the district stays on the right side of the law, which is you can't say vote yes, and you can't use persuasive language, and you can't say, create a sense of urgency. There's some key things that the Secretary of State is really, and Oregon state law is very clear on. But you can talk about the need. You can describe what the bond will do. You can create really good pieces of mail. You can do all direct mail and digital efforts. All these things the district can do itself, but you have to stick to the facts. And then the PAC is what's below here, which is the community PAC effort, and is launched in an engaging community. That's the emotional voice. That is the persuasive. That's the vote yes. That's what this group, board members are typically part of that, but not just board members. Can't just be you're out there just giving the reasons, and you can say a lot more than the district can. So that's why I have this image here in the next page, which is two parallel tracks. There used to be a thing where the district did its long range facilities plan, then created the bond, came up with the bond language and the bond package, and then put it on the ballot and walked away and handed it off to a community PAC. And that's not that's not what we do anymore. It's actually two trains running on tracks next to each other all the way through election day. The district's putting out factual information, and the PAC, community PAC, is running the vote yes information. And you need both to win. So questions on that, about the distinction between those two things?
Jeremy, this is Frida speaking. I'm the only board member here who's done a bond campaign. Okay. And what you're saying seems to be the opposite of what we did in the last campaign, where the district, yes, they did fact sheets, that type of thing. But they weren't as robust as your last slide showed.
Mm-hmm.
In doing, has something changed over time that's allowed a little more leeway? Because this sounds more like what we used to do quite a few years ago on a bond campaign with district staff.
Yeah, so the law is still the same, ORS 260.432, there, which is governs public employees and public agencies, their how use of electioneering for both candidates and measures. So there's a few key things they make very clear that public agencies and public employees cannot do around it. And one is advocate for a yes vote. That's a big no-no. And then there is a couple other things around persuasive language and campaigning during public time. I think a lot of people are familiar with that. Don't campaign during your workday if you are a public employee. That doesn't apply to school board members, for the record. You're elected officials and can always advocate. But this is about this is about district employees. But what's changed a little bit, I guess, for it is that we've at least our firm has worked with the Secretary of State, worked with their process of safe harbor language. They have a process. We've landed, and it really started with Reynolds and Gresham Barlow going through it, and then moving through all of our other folks over the last 5 years. We kind of understand what we can say and what we can't say. And you're allowed to do all these things. It's just got to make sure that the language is correct and on the right side of that line. And so we've developed a lot of best practices through trial and error and submitting language and getting it sent back and kind of figuring out what the changing a word here and there. It's lots of little things too, like you can't say the bond will do something. You have to say would. You have to as a school district, you have to clarify that if the bond passes, this is what it would do. But you can do all those things on the list here. You just can't. You just have to be really clear about the language and where it's coming from versus the community pack, which can say vote yes and anything they want.
Well, the language isn't so much because I'm fairly clear on what type of language the district can do, what kind the pack can do. But quite a few years ago, when we would go after a bond or a tax base, whatever the case would be, we would have a shared committee on as part of the PAC where there'd be administrators or district personnel. And it was all done after hours, never done on school time. And then the last time we did it, it was like it was a no-no to have them participating in the PAC. Because I know our superintendent at the time was also a resident of David Douglas. So he was walking a fine line because of that, because he felt as a resident, he could say something, just couldn't say it as a superintendent. but it was just more like it was a very clean break between the PAC and the district.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what I don't know what Reynolds and Gresham Barlow did.
Well, yeah, Gresham Barlow, we probably sent out, probably 5 pieces of mail from the district itself and did a whole bunch of direct, digital, and happy to, Pat can connect with Athena. Yeah, these items are stuff we do with districts all over the state. And, in Oregon, it's, Washington has slightly different rules. As long as, the district can spend money on these items, as long as it's public engaging, there's some key rules around, like, for instance, you can't pick out specific voters. You have to send information to every voter in your district. You can't, do, I'm only sending it to Democrats, women Democrats, whatever. That type of stuff. But, this is all stuff that we work in to have found with a lot of districts that in a lot of places, it's super helpful because the district and the PAC are working side by side. And obviously, there's differences between the two, but it really gives you a robust information campaign out there that sometimes if you just relied on the PAC, you couldn't do because it's hard to raise money. It's hard to do time. So that's why we have found the district helping out in doing this in a legal way has really led to a number of increased successes in passing these bonds.
Well, it seems like, if you, I hate to take up time, but this is important to me because I'm kind of on the bond committee.
Yeah.
It seems in order to do that, it almost has to be someone from the district also on the PAC, and most PACs, when we did it, was all an evening, that type of thing anyway. So it wasn't using district time, but is that allowable?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's been a number of findings about public employees' right to engage in political activity on their own time. So including superintendents, there was actually a finding. I know what you're talking about, superintendents. There was a time when superintendents were seen as always working. Ken, I know that you are always working, right? But there was so they couldn't engage in some political activity. There was actually a Supreme Court finding on that about no longer than that now, ago, maybe 8-9 years ago, that allowed them to actually have a private life, found that they can have private citizen activities, like going knocking door to door on a Saturday morning for a bond. So yes, the key line here is that if it's a district employee or someone, a teacher, a front office member, a cabinet member, they can meet up in the PAC or go knock on the door on a weekend. They just gotta make really clear that's not on their work time. That's just the major thing.
Okay, well, that much I knew, that they couldn't be on their work time and stuff, but I'll let you finish up. Okay. I have more questions later.
Please, I'm happy to. That's what I'm here for. So just so I talked a little bit about the PAC and district working side by side. And then just before we get into the detailed calendar, I just want to reiterate some of the keys to victory. What we have found is the best practices with districts that win, and especially in tough places where you're asking for a tax increase. You start early, meaning early, you start your bond development process early, you get everything, give yourself some time, because it takes a long time for the retail level of politics to get out there and really just engage folks over and over again about why you need it. You do a robust public engagement before filing anything. So we talked about that already, but it's super important that you ask people's opinion before you ask for their money, really get them to understand. I call this what I call like the no surprises, that the idea is by the time people see something on their ballot, they know that they expect for it to be there. It's not like, what's this? You're always going to have some people, like, of course, who are just cluing in a week out from election day. But the more you can have people go, oh yeah, that's a school bond, I want to vote for that, the better chance you have to win. Multiple input sources. What I mean by that is, there's community input, there's parent input, there's, making sure you have culturally specific input, and then you have good polling, which is your quantitative information that really helps drive what you can do. Make sure you have a lot of those and don't just rely on a few, especially the loudest voices or the loudest parents who want something specific. Sports is a really great example of this. Fields are very popular among a very select group of people, not typically popular among the larger community. Flexibility, be flexible. When you're going to go, the size and the content of your bond, you may have something in your head, you may have a bunch of projects. We have to be flexible to get you to a yes vote, and also just when you're going to do it. Proposed bond package reflect district and community needs. So that balance, the overlap, what do you need? What do you want to get out of it? And what does the community want to pay for it? Got to find that sweet spot. Districts appropriately budgets for the bond effort. So what we were just talking about, make sure you set some money aside to actually engage and get out there and have the funds as a district, not just, to talk to voters. Board fully supportive, engaged. This is super important. Making sure everyone is on board. Doesn't mean every board member does the same amount of work with the PAC or with the district and doing the roadshow, but it does mean that everyone needs to be, a unanimous support for it. Robust parent and staff engagement. Can't emphasize that enough. We gotta get our parents to vote. It's always the case. And then a well-run community PAC that uses modern political tools and techniques. So we can get more into what that means, but that there's a lot of tools out there. A lot of you have run for your own offices. You know what I'm talking about in terms of voter targeting and everything else. And make sure that just because it's a school board campaign doesn't mean you can't use those tools, and doesn't mean you shouldn't. Any questions on the keys here? Okay, so I'll try to see if I zoom in here so I don't kill everyone's eyes. So just worked up real briefly, like what, back in a little bit, like what you would have to do between now and November 2021. Let's talk in the, Pat sent out and so I just grabbed some of these dates and added a few more, but just key as a district, your deadline to file is August 13th of this year, 2021. There's a two-step filing process. You file your caption, ballot title, and some 175-word summary. There's a 2-week comment period, and then September 2nd is your deadline to file for a notice of measure election. So that's technically when you tell the county elections to place it on the ballot. September 7th is the last day to file arguments for inclusion in the voters pamphlet. The voters pamphlet is what the PAC would do. This is your emotional argument saying, please vote yes. We've all gotten our pamphlets and looked at the yes and no arguments. That always comes up quick. That's why it's important to put it on. People forget how quickly that comes after Labor Day. Ballots are mailed on the 12th. Election day is the 2nd. So what you would have to do based on our, just looking at a calendar is here, we're in May, but you begin to identify your bond development community members. You retain a bond communications and engagement consultant, an architect. There's all the folks I've talked about, and/or a community facilitator to help you with your bond development committee. You do electoral landscape review, what are your ballot options. You finalize your bond development committee members, and your invites go out. So you got to be, okay, who's going to join us and who is really good folks who could help us craft a great bond and who are representative of the community. And so we get a good diverse group. We create a bond overview calendar and plan that takes you through November. That would have to be done by early June. You get an intent to you start developing your second polling with the intent to field that survey in July. Your bond development committee will have to meet throughout all June. So they would have, your goal would be like at least 5 times in June, early July, for them to meet, talk about, your long range facilities plan, some of the district's, prioritizations lists, and walk through it with an architect or a community facilitator. What do we get to, what makes sense. The consultant team conducts polling in early July. We present that polling to this group, the district leadership and the board. You present the polling to the bond development committee. The bond development committee and the district work together to finalize a draft proposal for public feedback based on the polling and all the other work they've done. And then the district compiles a process and calendar for getting community feedback on the draft proposal that the committee has come up with. A lot of times that's virtual outreach in this day and age. Oops. And then in August, so this takes us through early August. So this is a really tight timeline, right? You've done your, and then your district develops that community, goes out and asks the community for their opinion about the bond development committee's packet proposal. They take any feedback from the community, consider any changes, finalize the package. Then they have to come to you, the board, and present that package. And then you have to draft, or the board, the district has to draft a ballot title, caption, and explanatory statement, what I just talked about. You finalize the estimated costs. You have to have a special session or a regular session to vote on the resolution to place the bond on the ballot. And then you vote to place the bond on the ballot, and it's go time. So this is, again, kind of overlap between these two sections, but you have to vote to file it by the 13th of August. You have to then draft your 500-word explanatory statement, which is a whole separate thing. And then the district gets into launching the bond engagement plan and education plan. At the same time in August, by August, the PAC has to be up and running, has to be raising money during the summer, has to be doing, all the other, a number of the things to be ready to go in the fall as well. And then in the fall, we talked about all those items already, but this is what the district would be doing. And then the PAC would be doing its own work. But, and all those engagement, education, we call it educating engagement plan, because obviously you can't have a persuasion plan coming from the district, but the PAC would be, at the same time in September and October, developing its materials to go out and do persuasive yes messaging as well. So that's a rough timeline of what I think you would need, based on our best practices, what we would recommend you do between now, in midsummer and getting you to fall and be able to engage in a robust campaign this fall. So that's the entirety of kind of the on-screen presentation. I can keep it up, or you guys want to have a conversation? I
had a question.
Yep.
One of the things that I asked before was, I don't see in the timeline prior to you getting to polling, is there any point where where we can share just general information about what a bond is and how that process works before you get to the specifics of what we want the bond to do and what we're trying to get it for? Just the general basic information of this is what a bond is, and this is how it works in how schools acquire this money from a district, that could be shared with everyone, really.
Yeah.
But especially families, especially parents, that people are aware, so that everybody has a baseline of knowledge, as opposed to some people really being knowledgeable and other people not having any idea.
I'm trying to agree. We have in here awareness of the need and how the bond development process works, which is absolutely what you just said. And I think you should be doing that now, right? Like, so, why a bond? We have, there's some really basic materials out there, which is like, most people don't get the difference between, bonds build buildings, right? And, and there's this, a little bit of a basic, generally a lack of understanding, which you pointed out. I'll say it's always hard to get people to really clue in and get the difference, just because in a lot of voters' minds, it's just one big pile of money, right? Pot of money kind of coming in different places. But we can certainly, especially among your most key users, like your parent community, as you said, I would be getting stuff out there now. Like, here, did you know that we have this huge list of stuff our need, and how we get there is a bond, not because we don't want to be taking money out of the operating budget of the district.
Exactly.
Do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that has to be, that's always the first thing you want to do in favor.
So that's before you even have the committee, then. Is that something that should come from the district leadership? Is that something that goes out from the board, or do you have a recommendation one way or the other?
Yeah, all the above, right? The board could now adopt, a resolution about looking at your long-range facilities plan and the awareness of the need, and we're exploring a bond. The district could send out a press release saying we're doing that, and then you have to do parent education and community education. We're talking about social media and an email from maybe the Ken or a board chair, and then saying, here's what we're considering it, and there's going to be an opportunity for input, and please keep your,
Right.
that needs to happen. And I would do it now, if you're talking about November.
Great, thank you.
I had a point, just a point of clarification. Did you, on one of those slides, say that around 70 to 75% of voters are non-parents?
Yeah, typically.
Oh, wow.
Well, let me be clear. Don't have kids in your schools, because they could be older and have parent kids, but yeah, most districts, and I didn't poll the numbers before this meeting, but I can for you guys. Yeah, most it's between 70, typically 70-75% of folks, or if other way, 25 to 30%, have kids in school at any given time in most school districts in Oregon. And so that's always a challenge, right? And so just talking about your November 2021 election, that's going to be a really small turnout. So a November 21 election is going to be, we're working with a few districts who are going out this November. And, we're already talking about, because in the May election, 60 to, depending on what district you were in, let me be clear, but in a few places we were working between 60 and 65% of the electorate was 70 plus, right? And so 2/3 of the voters were 70 plus is one place. And that's almost impossible to pass upon when it's just seniors. I looked at your polling that Ben did, and you do much better with younger voters, which is parent age voters. It's just always the case. So you just have to be aware that if you go for off-year election, you're going to have a different electorate than if you go for a primary or a general election. There's just different, but there's other disadvantages for that as well. I'm happy to talk through that. But if you look in November 20, you're going to have to absolutely zero in on turning out those parents and younger voters, because regular voters, the people who vote in off-year elections, are just people who are older. It's just always the case.
Jeremy, could you go to the last slide?
Sure.
I think it was the last slide.
The last on the calendar?
It was one right there in September.
Yes.
When you're showing this under September, is that mainly district activity?
Mm-hmm.
So what you're saying, okay, and this is what I want to get into dollars.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a cost for the PAC to do a bond measure. And what is the cost now to hire a consultant like yourself to work with a PAC to do a bond measure?
So we work with both the district and we typically, what we typically do, our Right Public Affairs, is we work with the district side, and as we said, like start about a year out and helping them through the bond development process, or 6 months out, like helping through that, through all the stuff you see here. We also engage with PACs sometimes, depending on the size and robustness. So for instance, I would have to look at giving you a number out of the top of the head wouldn't make any sense here, just because when it comes to like PAC work, it depends. Like, so we only work on the PAC side. We only have done that for Portland Public Schools. Portland is a Safe and Healthy Schools is the PAC, right? And we've done 3 of their campaigns. And that's a huge effort, right? And we're raising between $500,000 and $1 million. And it's just a major campaign. And so that's very different in terms of staff time versus a smaller PAC effort, where it just would really depend on what the needs are, our time, what we're producing for you on the PAC side. We would have to have a kind of a separate conversation there.
This relates to it, because our last bond measure, it was the PAC that hired the personnel. We are very low income area, okay? We have a lack of volunteers. So the last time we did it, we hired someone to help with the organization and the handling of the mailing and for the PAC, the setting up phone banks, doing the door-to-door stuff, everything like that. But it sounds like you're more on a district side, doing work for the district, pushing a bond.
We do both. We do both, and sometimes depending on the district, sometimes we work on both. We just have to have a separate relationship with the PAC, and a clarity that a staff member of mine that's working on PAC time is not working for the PAC, is not using any public agency funds to do work. So like use East County examples. In Gresham Barlow, I had a campaign manager who worked for the PAC, and we worked on the district side. So we can do both. And we have in some places, and then in other places we exclusively just work on the district side, mainly because you just said it, like most PACs. The reason we have this, I put for this plan for a lot of districts, is that most places aren't PPS or Beaverton or Salem, where you have a huge tax base. You can go out and raise a ton of money for a PAC, or a relative amount of money for a PAC. So there are opportunities for the district to leverage their resources to bring in a lot of things that you see on this list. That is, so that's why we do the 2-track method, because then it takes some pressure off of that PAC. PAC still has to do its work and stuff to get out there, but as you said, like fundraising, I remember, is just like in Centennial, it's just incredibly hard, right? And in tax basis isn't there. I mean, this is a way of leveraging both.
Did you do centennials?
I did. We didn't do the last centennial. I did Centennial 2 centennials ago.
Okay, but you did Reynolds.
We did Reynolds, yes.
Did you do the PAC side of Reynolds?
Yes. Yeah. So we only did the PAC side of Reynolds, actually. Reynolds, in that case, we didn't do any work with the district.
And what was and you can give me a range of cost. I was the treasurer on the last time there was a bond. I did all those filings and all that garbage.
Yeah,
so I was really into the money of a bond and a PAC. So I'm looking for a range on what it's costing now, because it's quite a few years later.
Yeah, it really depends. I'm not trying to be. It just really depends for a PAC.
Reynolds is similar to us. That's why I'm wondering about Reynolds.
Yeah,
and if you work with their PAC.
That was 2015, so I would have to go back and look. But typically, what we do is just charge. It depends. If you need a staff member, then there's a staff cost. Or if you're just looking for someone to help you with the mailers, and then it's just a price per piece on the mailer and the size of your district. It's not where we're mailing, or like a digital or TV ad campaign. So there's just like it's just not. I would have to think about I have to go look, because obviously for a larger district we have like a fat, from a PAC side we have like a flat fee that we do, but that wouldn't make sense in a district your size. So
yeah, no, I'm trying to. We spent about 50 to 60,000 the last time we did it, and I'm just trying to get a sense of.
Yeah, in terms of how much we raised, in Gresham Barlow, I think we raised about 110,000, 120,000. Similar size districts to yours, and not necessarily East County, but in recent years, I'm thinking of places down in the valley. We've worked with a Corvallis, or on the coast, Astoria. They raised between $30,000 and $50,000. One of the things that there's one of the things I always encourage PACs, or like Redmond, I think we raised about 80,000. One of the things we always encourage with PACs is that there's a lot of folks who may not have be located in your district, but may have interests in helping you, and we can certainly be helpful with that. Those lists of businesses and organizations and other PACs and stuff like that we have relationships with and can be helpful.
Okay, because I know for us, it's the PAC side that needs assistance. Definitely. So
yeah,
I should let others ask their questions.
Hi, Jeremy. This is Aaron.
Hey, Aaron.
So I'm having some trouble wrapping my mind around this. So if November is a much bigger poll because our younger voters don't turn out in force, which makes sense because it's the last election. I had a hard time voting, even though I had a pretty stake in it. And we're just coming out of this pandemic. Why is this a good time to go for a bond?
Well, there's a couple things there. I'll say that, when I talked to Pat and Ken earlier this week, just that you were looking at November 21, but I want to emphasize that I think this is a very quick timeline. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but it means you'd have to get going now. And you know, it's going to be a lot of work. You know, it's always a lot of work, but it would be a sprint here. I know that you filed for the awesome grant, and so there, you know, that is a consideration for November 21. I will say that one of my keys to victory here is flexibility and timing and size and content. So I would encourage you to like take a hard look at this calendar, take a hard look at the, you know, timing, and you know, you figure out your needs. It sounds like you don't have a bond falling off, so you know, November isn't needed. Sometimes districts have bonds that are falling off, so you have to go out in order to maintain the tax rate. So there's kind of a deadline. I'm dealing with one right now, so we are going. So the benefit of a November 21 election, I'll say, is that you dominate the ballot. You're the only one on there, or probably the only one on there, and so you would have the full attention of the community. You're not being lost. The disadvantages is it's going to be a very low turnout election. It's hard to get folks who are your core supporters to pay attention, and it's going to be tough just because seniors are going to dominate that turnout. Nothing against seniors, just in general. I looked at your polling. You guys do better with younger voters. So you know, if you look at May 21, 2022, that's going to be a higher turnout election. They're going to have a very robust gubernatorial primary. I assuming that at this point, and that could be very helpful for the type of voters who tend to vote yes on bonds. But then the drawback to that is that you get lost on the ballot a little bit, right? And so you would have to do a different type of campaign in terms of making sure people are aware of the bond, making sure you vote your whole ballot. And you could to think called undervote. People vote for the primary gubernatorial candidate of their choice and then don't vote for the rest of stuff on their ballots. So it's a different, it gives you more time, more flexibility, gives you opportunity. In terms of pandemic, you know, we went 5-0 last year in the pandemic. So you can win these bonds in, you know, virtually with a lot of stuff. You know, so that doesn't stop you. But I would say, you know, the biggest impediment you have right now is that, like, timing, just the time, looking at it.
Can I ask you about something else too, just in your expert opinion? So if we went out in May instead, we'd have a lot more, there'd be a lot more money related things on the ballot. And I know personally, I don't know if this is the same thing for everybody, but when there's a lot of stuff on the ballot that has to do with money, I'm typically more likely to just vote no on as much as possible. I think it's a psychological thing. I just see all these big piles of money, you know. Is that something that would affect our chances if we did go for a later, you know, for a later bond run?
It can. It depends on what you're up against. So I've done focus groups. We've seen a lot of behavior around this. People do prioritize. They don't. Some people do what you're saying, Aaron, is to say, "Yep, I'm going to vote no," because they generally don't trust ballot measures at all. So there is a default no voter, just because they're like, they're just distrustful, right? And we do have some history in Oregon, which is legitimate. Not so much anymore, but there was a time with, you know, kind of purposely sneakily worded stuff. So that's stuck around. But for the vast majority of people, you know, they rank. If there's multiple measures that are asking for money, especially local asks, they will make a rate based on their own priorities, for sure. And sometimes schools win and sometimes schools lose. Most of the time, schools are high up on that ranking because they're seen as a core function of government. So, you know, if there's a jail levy and a, you know, well, we've done the homelessness measure for Metro, but, you know, there's, I'm trying to think of a few other examples, a fire district and a, you know, maybe an additional affordable housing measure or whatever. You know, those things, people will say, okay, what's my priority as a voter? And they will prioritize it. And a lot of times schools are at the top or up near the top, but there are times where people see a different priority and will choose it. So it is a drawback for sure, just because it can be confusing, and people will default. That answer your question, Aaron?
It does, yeah. I'm kind of looking at this from the standpoint of someone who likes to sell things, and I know that when I really feel like it's the right time and I'm passionate about something, it's much easier to sell than if, I have questions in my own mind about, the timing and the need right at the moment. So I was hoping to get some clarity, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. And I also I'll emphasize in terms of flexibility, I can think of, Oregon City is a great example where, they were, when I originally started working with them, school district, they were planning on going, I think, to a May 2017 ballot, and we wound up winning in a November 2018 ballot, right? And I'm not saying this to push you guys to a different ballot. I'm saying this because they twice decided to not go to an election because they didn't feel like their community or the district had gotten to a place where they were ready. But in another place, we wound up going earlier because they felt like, what, we don't need to wait. And so it's just really about, feeling like, have you checked these boxes? And so I'll say that the elections, you can always game out, okay, which election is going to be better for us. Like talking about whether November or May based on turnout and all that. But the number one thing that's key to success is doing these things on this list. And you have, whether it's a May or November, if you do the work, you have a much better chance of winning. More so, that's a better predictor of your success at the ballot as a school district than what particular election.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the answers. I'm kind of racking my brain to see if I can think of anything else right at the moment, but I'm not right now. But thank you so much.
Okay.
Jeremy, when you're talking about other measures,
Mm-hmm.
and you're out there listening, I'm on citywide budget committee, so I deal with housing, so I'm out there in the groups that talk about going for measures. Mm-hmm. And I'm not hearing any measures being considered. Housing, we just completed homelessness. The parks just got theirs. Hasn't been too long since the library got theirs. So a lot of the normal things, other than school bonds, seem to have already, most of them passed. And so they're not on anyone's radar to do anything else like that again, at least not within the next year. And usually they start talking about things at least a year ahead of time when they're trying to do something like that. At least that's what I've found. Yeah,
I'm with you. I have not seen or heard too much. So that's a good point for you. Thank you for flagging that. The one thing I can think of is legislative referral. There could be some stuff that gets referred, whether by the legislature or by people trying to refer, filing and gathering signatures to push it to the ballot, but that would be statewide issues. Yeah. Wouldn't be local tax issues. I had nothing's popped up on like the Multnomah County Metro radar that would encompass David Douglas that I've seen at this time. But there's also, there's a lot of fast moving items right now, and people are responding to a lot of things. So, yeah. So it would be, chances are there won't be much on the May ballot for property tax issues, because that's what ours is the property tax issue. Property tax. No, not that no, almost high likelihood no. In your, because I can't think of a property tax. It could, the latest, most of the stuff recently has been some form not a property tax, but income or, cat tax or all the stuff we're well familiar with. But yeah, I mean, the biggest thing in May next year is going to be candidate stuff.
Yeah, and that is, to me, that is in our concern's always been when there's like PPS puts a bond measure on it, we have a bond measure. A lot of people don't understand the difference between the two.
100%.
And so those kind of things can be a problem for us. I can remember one year Park Rose with PPS, and PPS was someone was putting vote no on PPS bond measure on Park Rose property, So we have concerns like that.
Well, don't worry. I did the last one in November for PPS.
Yeah.
We're good for 4 years. So
you hope so.
Yeah. You never know with that district, I have to say, working with them.
So great conversation, and I'm not jumping in to turn it off. I just want to time check, recognize it's a 7 o'clock in a workshop. We're scheduled to be till 8. We do have a few other items to review and discuss. Again, not saying that's right now, but I do want to just time check, remind everyone where we're at, and maybe Pat, just be thinking about what the following questions, because I know there's a couple other conversations on the agenda. But with that said, I will mute again and just continue, give some wait time here. Any other specific questions based on Jeremy's presentation and/or just questions in general that you've been wondering about, we've been wondering about? Obviously, Jeremy's a wealth of knowledge and has a ton of information to share.
I just want to clarify what you said, Jeremy. And I think what you were saying was that if we're going for November now, but when November rolls around, it looks like a bad idea, and we could pump the brakes and then go for May instead. I just want to double check and make sure that's what you were saying.
So your off ramp on that would be, you have to decide by August 13th. That's the deadline for the district to file the bond language. So technically, maybe you could do it the second, but you don't want to do that. So you do have a few months. We're sitting on May 27th. So you do have a few months to, you could engage the process and get your bond development committee and, look at your package levels, different cost, price per thousands. I've seen some of the stuff from Piper, and then, maybe do a poll based on where the committee lands. And if you don't feel like it's a solid enough space, you can go out and continue to do the work. This is we've done multiple places, and then you go to a May election. If you don't feel like by early August, you're in good enough spot but Pat, please jump in. You guys, have you been awarded the Awesome Grant? Or Ken?
We were awarded back in December, but we need to reapply.
Yeah, and so I'm on the Awesome Grant Advisory group, and we were talking. A lot of groups. There's a pandemic thing, but that wouldn't apply here in terms of being able to roll over. But a lot of folks are able to, if you do need to reapply. It hasn't been as difficult, especially depending on. I assume David Douglas is pretty high up on the priority list to reapply for a May election. It's been a fairly seamless. We shortened that window opportunities for districts. So if you choose not to go in November, it's not, you don't have to wait 2 years anymore. Like there was a penalty before, not a penalty, but a reapply waiting time, and that doesn't exist as much anymore because of this exact situation where districts were feeling, especially smaller districts, we're needing more flexibility. But the Awesome Grant is a great tool to talk in your community, especially with more conservative or older voters. Also, any type of seismic or all these other things, we can bring, leverage non-local dollars to help you or pay for local things is always very popular with a certain segment of the populace.
Hey, thank you.
Other questions? Otherwise, I might look to Pat to keep us going with the agenda.
I don't have a question so much as a comment. We've kind of like circled this topic for a year and a half, and we keep saying, okay, well, the next time there's going to be an election, we should go do that. And then it never feels like when, like you said, if we go out for November, we've just got a really limited amount of time to get everything together to make November happen. And so and this is coming from the board member that's going off the board next month. But you know, like if we decided to not go out in November, somehow this group needs to get themselves together so that the next one, when it's time, we're actually ready to go. Because it feels like every time we talk about this, we're like, okay, we're going to do it. And then it's like, okay, we don't have enough time. And then it just keeps, it's a repeating thing. It's a repeating theme for us. So that's just my comment.
Yeah, I think if we decide to wait and not do this November, then at that decision, we should be setting when we are doing it. So if we say, oh, not November, it will be May, or it will be November 2022. So it won't be that thing. Then that just means we're still starting right at this point. We just have a longer, on-ramp.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you look at my calendar, I laid out for you like a typical bond program we start now. So like you guys were looking at May 2022 election, this is when we start working with districts typically. So even if you decide in the next, like what you just said, you actually, everything on the list needs to start. Like there's nothing, no time like the present.
Yeah, this is Chair Andrea, or Chair Valderrama. Sorry, I don't have my camera on, y'all. I'm just getting back in from Salem, but I would just reiterate what Jeremy shared, that I do think that it's not necessarily about saying, oh, we're not going to do this now. I think that the decision point and us being able to lead and give clarity to the district, that has to be now. That's why we're having this conversation now. If there are additional questions that you all have or concerns, it would be helpful now to flesh that out and to talk that through with Jeremy or others. But I do think that just want to lift up that there is work to be done regardless, right? Whether we're in November kind of sprinting or May normal campaign time frame. This is something that is, if we all agree, which it sounds like in the conversation, we all, kind of want to go that direction, that we do need to figure out just the how. And so just wanted to reiterate that, it's not so much at this point of necessarily delaying. I think we need to be clear about, kind of the fact that, we want to get this done. And so, yeah, just wanted to make that clarification, but, I'm open to what folks feel like makes the most sense. I think, if we do have a little bit more time, May seems, a little better. And Jeremy, I appreciate you with the clarification of the Awesome Grant, reapplication. That's super helpful to know. So yeah. Anyways, those are my 2 cents.
Thank you, Andre. So just back to that, I'm going to ask Pat quickly, because absolutely understand, and I'm not saying this because I want to push the board one way or the other. I truly don't, because I don't believe if the appetite is there for November and we do not feel it's right as a team, then we all got to be on board, right? Ultimately, right? Just to summarize, but I do think there's other consequences. I don't think it's anything that we can't overcome, but I want to make sure that we're clear. One of them is the Awesome Grant, which I think there's a pretty clear path to that. I do believe we're still high in the list. I think that we would have a high chance. Obviously, I can't guarantee anything, but I'm pretty confident there. But Pat, when it comes to our facilities plan, comes to some of the other documentation, is any of that timing out, and is there any anything there that we'd have to re-tee up, and just making sure that we have a clear picture and vision of what May looks like.
Sure. So 2 key pieces to the Awesome grant are having your facility plan and facility assessments. We did the facility assessments, I believe, in 2018. And so I just need to validate that they would still be good. If we went out next May, I believe they will be. I just want to double check the date on those, because if they weren't, then we would have to get going on that, because that's a pretty lengthy process to get an architect on board and go through each building and look at and assess each building's needs. So I have an email in to verify that, but I want to say we're right on the cusp of that expiring.
Thank you, Pat. So it sounds like, unless we hear something soon, and once we hear that, we'll make sure there's an email, especially if it's a red flag. But it sounds like we're good as far as what we have prepared and ready. So if that is a decision of the board to look at May, or that's ultimately the direction we're looking, it seems like we'd have our ducks in a row, for lack of a better term, and we could. I agree with the board. I agree with the conversation that I've heard so far, that if it's less about a conversation of delaying and more about a decision and a conversation to direct the board, or direct the district, excuse me, and kind of go through the process of May is our date. Now, with that said, as we go through this process that Jeremy explained, and if there is a time through that process, we find out that May is not it and we have to hit an off ramp, okay, we have to do that. But I would really like to think and consider that if May is what we're looking at, that we're going all in until the data or information tells us otherwise, right? That we are committed to it, and we start the process of education, as Donna said, and going through the process of ultimately really communication and campaign, right? A campaign before a campaign, or however you want to call it, to get things rolling. Because we have been here before, right? We've been through this conversation before. And again, it does, I think when you talk pandemic, when you talk of, there's just all kinds of different factors. But I will say, from the district and as a superintendent, at some point, we do need to move forward. At some point, our facilities, deferred maintenance, at some point, the key investments, really excited about, but just the deferred maintenance piece and looking at our buildings and facilities, at some point we'll start digging a hole. And obviously we don't want to be there. So just sharing that. Again, we're here. I'm here to serve the board. So I'm not saying this to convince or anything, just kind of making sure all the information's there, and we will support and move whatever direction the board would like to go.
Ken, just so everyone knows, like for a May election, the filing deadline is February, or like mid-February. So just thinking through what you guys are, just a calendar doesn't really, it's coming too, right? So that it's not that far away.
I appreciate that, Jeremy.
Jeremy, our last bond measure, we decided in January for May election and passed it at 65%. But I'll tell you, it was 75 days of round the clock work for a very small group of people.
You can do it, absolutely. But it is, you just said it's a heavy lift.
So there are a few other key topics on the agenda. I do think it'd be beneficial to just continue to walk through them and have a conversation so we, understand where we're at. Is that okay? Is there a comfort level with continue to move on with the agenda? I see Donna, you're unmuted, please.
I just want to know though, even if we go forward with the agenda, are we making a decision on this tonight? Because I think we need to just make a decision one way or the other. Or is there some particular thing that we're going to wait for in order to make the decision?
Don't we have to do it at a regular board meeting? Because we did vote to go in November, and if we're changing that, wouldn't we have to do it in a regular board meeting?
Yeah. So to take any kind of action, it has to be in a board meeting. Basically what we're talking about is a decision, not a decision or action, but direction. If I leave this meeting with the board giving me a thumbs up that we want to look at May, we literally will start conversations, right? But yes, an action item needs to go in our business meeting, Donna, as we go. But again, technically, that action item that is kind of around the filing dates, and it's later down the road, but it's kind of ceremonial, for lack of a better term, right? So the next board meeting, we could bring an action item that really is that commitment. Hey, we're doing it in May. This is what it is. But like I said, I think that later on, based on what Jeremy just shared, and I don't know what the date would be for May, but later on, the board would then have to come back and make a statement around bond language and approve us and the work we've done to that date.
Okay.
Pat, do you want to take time to walk through the rest of the agenda?
Sure. So the next topic was about bond sales and the cost per thousand. And we've had Piper Sandler and Carol Samuels come several times. And so I sent you several of their different levy rate analysis. They actually did get the one done yesterday for us. And what that one did was took, I believe it was 100 million and split it into two sales. So it's really going to be dependent upon looking at, what's acceptable to the voters as far as how much, the timing of the projects, because I would say two of the big projects are the high school kind of restructure, and then the new elementary. And you wouldn't want, in my opinion, to run both of those at the same time. And because they're fairly significant in amounts, if you want to keep and stagger the levy a bit, I would separate those two out. So, right now, I think our levy rate is $1.36. It's gone down about 40 cents in the last 3 or 4 years. Yeah. And so we've kind of missed a couple opportunities there to keep that up. So Frida, I think you added this to the agenda. Is there something in particular you wanted to talk about?
No, I more it's the discussion of breaking it up, because we know we've had a declining in enrollment. But we also, through our facilities plan, know the high priority is for preschool in every school, which we cannot do unless we have another building, because we don't have capacity in our schools, and it would be much more costly to add to each school. So I was more concerned about the discussion of, say we go out for it, and like you're saying, split the high school from the elementary. It's not reasonable to do a new elementary, because of course we got to man it as well. We got to have the money to man it. But moving maybe with the high school first, which was very, very highly supported, but then wait for sale of bonds for the elementary and use that in the marketing that though it's going to be split up. Plus, I'm still curious on the urban renewal areas, because both Lentz and Gateway are expiring, and it will have a huge impact. It's going to add over $500 million to our assessed value, which will bring down the cost per thousand, because we have all those extra thousands. But so it was more understanding if doing those kind of things and how they could impact. I think based on discussions with facility planning is that you definitely want the money for the repairs and maintenance things you guys needed to do, the high priority things. So we'd have to be selling bonds at a minimum for that. But it seems like if we could stagger it and figure and know how much it's going to cost adding to people's property tax, that it's over time. It can be part of the marketing on doing a bond measure here.
Mhm.
So that was my thought behind wanting to see that information again and stuff.
Yeah, I think I would approach it probably just the opposite. I'd probably do the elementary first with the preschool for all. And then that would also give us some opportunities to do some swing spaces, to do some remodeling in some of the elementaries, to add some preschool space or to remodel preschool space, and then do the high school. And I'd probably split the deferred maintenance in half and sell half in one section and half in the other. But that would be my suggestion, but that doesn't mean that that's what.
And that's fine. I'm just giving the idea about breaking it out. And I just know we have to deal with the declining enrollment, that issue when you're marketing the bond. And why are we building? And I know we have the issue, once you build a new school, you got to man it, but there's a high cost just for the base without the teachers. Staff that's needed in an elementary school just to run an elementary school. So from a budgeting standpoint, that was why I was thinking about that particular thing being delayed. But I would go with what administration recommended anyway on which would go first. Though I have to tell you, I am self-motivated. I have a granddaughter who's in 6th grade. If we had a bond and we sold it and started building that wing of the high school, she'd at least get to have a little bit of the new high school when she went there. So, but that was just more my thought on getting the bond information, so we knew where we were at.
Okay. Were there any other questions or?
I'll just add, in terms of elementaries in your neck of the woods, there are couple great examples of beautiful new elementary schools that got built, both Reynolds and at North and East Gresham. Could be, if you talk with the community, and it's good examples of what can be done. And these are full tear downs, brand new buildings.
We have a piece of property by the Gateway Transit Center, which we plan to build an urban elementary school. So it'll be the first urban elementary around here, but we own with just 5 acres, where we have a lot of limited space here in Douglas. But that's what our plan is.
Okay, if we're done with that topic, the next topic was discussion, decision of board assignments.
You wanted me to kind of lead off on this, Pat, and after listening to Jeremy and how they're handled now, where the district can pick up part of the lift, that wasn't the case last time. It was very basic what the district did in communication. They weren't involved in the PAC activity other than staff who participated in phone calling or door knocking. But it was very separated, and all the major mailings were all done by the PAC. So I like the idea. We don't have a bond development committee. This could, if we do put it off to May, we could start right now. Pat and I have discussed how could we even get people to be on the PAC to do that. But if we were able to, the district was able to get a bond development committee going with some of these people who would cross over to the PAC when it was needed, it might be a segue for us getting the PAC up and going at some point. Because as I've told everyone, we have to have a treasurer. We have to have I think they call it a chairman or president, whatever they call it, on the PAC to take on those roles. because those are all technical roles that you do filings with the state. And so those things, you need to have people who are responsible enough to do the work that's required there. But board assignments, I'm throwing it out to the board now, is that, I personally, unless everyone, all 100% of board members are gonna pull some weight on this project, it's not worth going. Last time I did it, there was 2 board members who did 90% and 2 more that at least made some phone calls. And the others did nothing. And it's just too much of a burden if just a couple of us are taking the full load on this. So I just would like to see everybody involved in some way.
Could I ask a technical question for you, Jeremy?
Yep.
I'm a federal employee, and I know there's some really weird regulations about what I can and can't do as far as elections go and fundraising and the like. I'm just wondering if you know of anything that would be prohibitive of what I can be, or what kind of role I can take in this, as far as federal laws go.
Like Hatch Act violations type stuff. I have not come across, that's a really good question, and I wouldn't want to give you a wrong answer in terms of, I don't know your specific situation with federal employee. Haven't come across federal employees not being able, once again, on their personal time, being able to be involved in, political advocacy work of their own. But I'm not sure about maybe some technical positions like treasurer or stuff like that. I would direct you to, I can get you the answer if I know more about your situation, Aaron. And I know election law attorneys, so could definitely help.
Okay. Yeah, and there's a federal, VA legal team too that I can contact and ask them specifically. I was just curious if you knew anything.
I'm not a lawyer. Dropped out of law school.
All right, thank you. And Frida, I would definitely would want to work towards this if we do it. I'd want to be part of that. Part of the group that puts their weight behind it.
Yeah, because when he talked about going out and talking to groups and stuff, that we didn't even have enough people to do that last time. I think it was myself and Annette Matson that did 100% of it. And that's really helpful if there's board members I'm not doing a ton of it, but different groups to do the talking on a bond measure versus just 1 or 2 people doing it all. So, and it's a really good part of it, because then you get into the community and you are talking directly with people and can turn them into supporters that also will talk up the bond. I guess no one else on the board has questions about what roles they can play or should play or can't play. I guess you can say that.
Hey, this is Stephanie. I in my personal capacity would be happy with fundraising. And I'm also happy to serve on the campaign.
Yeah. And that's a key component, is the fundraising for the campaign. We're kind of lucky because the last campaign left funds available and they've been invested. So we've got over $19,000 to start this campaign with. So you aren't starting with zero.
That is awesome. That's great.
Yeah, our foundation has been kind of overseeing it. It got it invested and just overseeing it until this campaign, till the next bond campaign. But that would get us at least going on it, but there would be some additional fundraising that would be needed. And anyone who that was Annette's job. She did the fundraising. I did all the treasury and a lot of the planning work.
Apologies, I was away from my desk, but if we are going around with board members saying what they can provide or help support, kind of want to second a lot of what Stephanie said. I'm always more than happy to talk about things and go out there and promote. And I did a lot of talking for preschool for all, so I have no problem doing that, and also helping with fundraising in any capacity I can as well.
I think one of the things we can do to help as well as what I'm hearing and currently hearing, and again, the meeting's not over yet, but is that what we can do is work on an action item for your consideration for our next board meeting. And in that action item, we could talk about going out for the main board with some key components. And for example, obviously we can make a list of, slots, who needs to be involved in what committee and how and where, and we can start filling in names. And doesn't mean we can't overbook and we can't change and morph, but we can start putting some of these tools together. And what's going through my head as a team, if board leadership agrees as we move forward, is every agenda from here on out to May is going to have bond on it, is going to have bond action, communication, work, where we're at, what we're doing next, how we're getting there. And that starts with the June board meeting. So that's what I'm hearing so far. That's my intention. Obviously, I have to consult with Andrea and Sahar and make sure they're comfortable with that as we develop the June board meeting. And then in July, kind of just be moving forward with our next chair and vice chair and kind of go from there. But just sharing what I'm hearing at this point.
I think that would be helpful, Ken, what you said, to have a list of here are all the different areas, the specific roles, and then we can, put your name next to where you think you would best be serving. I think one thing that stuck out to me in Jeremy's presentation was there's kind of like a 2-layer thing that we are presenting and sharing and trying to get our community, whether that's students, parents, community members, excited about this, and then they are going and sharing with that this is not all even just, this group of people here that are taking this all the way, that it's about how do you reproduce that in the excitement or the enthusiasm in other people, and they go and share that. So I think that that's just really important to keep in mind. Even if we look at who are all the different groups within the David Douglas community and how we're going to present this and promote this to them and get them energized to go and share it then with their family and friends and neighbors. I think that's an important thing.
Oops, I'm sorry. I totally agree, Donna. I think, the activate, right? Activate our community, activate those partners. And I talked to Frida and I were in a different meeting today. And, typically when the decision's made and we start going down the road of a bond in a very serious focus, we talk to our labor groups as well. DDEA, OSEA, amazing partners, have been amazing partners in previous bonds and kind of helping us with that message, again, following the appropriate laws and rules and making sure it does not happen during school time, et cetera, et cetera. But as you know, the majority of our classified staff actually live within our district, and then many of our licensed staff do as well. So just right there, there's individuals, teams, and community members that I think would be happy to help.
Yeah.
I think if we're moving ahead and the group wants to go with May instead of November, then maybe even June's right around the corner, but maybe Pat, we can discuss who we might reach out to be on a bond development committee, because we do have some people from the facilities planning that were kind of interested. And then, we can start the ball rolling, at least getting other people involved outside the school board. unfortunately, I was telling Ken years ago, it wasn't never a problem because we had Citizens Advisory Committee, which were mainly parents and stuff involved. We had big parent groups at every school. We could poll people from every school in the district into campaigning and stuff. It's much harder now with this diversity within our school district, and our parent groups just aren't as robust as they once were. And nor have we had a lot of groups at the district level committees that have drawn more parents in and those are the ones who usually will step up and work on a bond.
Have we ever, I don't know whether this is a Brooke question or who, but has it, or Frida, you may know too, on past bonds, has there ever been a thing where you connected that work with curriculum, like especially with social studies or political science courses or conversations, and just like you would do when it's election time and you're trying to then bring all those principles, you know, of involved citizenship into the classroom, this seems like another opportunity to do that, to bring them into the local government structure, and that connection, especially between school and community. Has that ever been done before? Is that something that even seems practical?
It hasn't been done, Donna, that I'm aware of, but I love the idea. And I think it's certainly something we can especially connect with our high school and see where we can connect those. And we'll also be hiring, thanks to you, a social science teacher on special assignment who can maybe help connect that work and get something started there.
And Andrea, isn't the state looking at something that requiring a semester of civics just so students understand more about how government works, etc., in your local area? I thought I read something in the paper about that. I don't think she's there.
That is a good question. I don't know that exact bill. There's several hundred still going around, and it's a new rule. But I can definitely look into it.
Okay, because I thought I read something in the paper about that. I think because of everything that's happened this last election and whatnot.
And just to echo a lot of what Donna has mentioned a few times, for our upcoming meeting as well, if we can have some kind of communication plan of how we're going to just get what even is a bond, how does it fund things, what does it fund, why do we do it, Bond 101 communication of how we could do that for our community. I was also thinking of some organizations that do civic work or try to get more youth and young adults engaged, and how they do organizing 101 and whatnot. And they also may be interested in even partnering up for what even is a Bond 101, just so we can get that information out there to the community so they're ready to go. So then when polls go out and we ask what you think about a bond, they already know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I jump in. I think to Donna's question, I agree with Brooke. I don't think there's ever been a formal process, right? A formal district level. This is what we're going to do, and here's lessons, and here. But there's no doubt in my mind, speaking from someone that was a high school teacher, that during certain current events, community events, what has happened, whether it's leadership classes, civics classes, government classes, which we have, that these discussions do happen, right? That there are discussions around bond and what it is and how. I don't know how robust it is. It's not like a whole unit or anything, but again, I know that it has occurred, Donna, and I'm sure will, but is it, how robust is it? What does it look like? And back to Frida, your question, my understanding, and again, limited knowledge, obviously, like Andrea said, and she has much more information, but I believe there was something passed out of the Senate to make civics a graduation requirement, at least a half a semester is what they're looking at. and I think it's Senate Bill 513. But with that said, I think that's probably the article you read, Frida, and I read it too. So it's something that I think is coming down the pike, but one step at a time.
I have one more question. It's Pat, I think maybe to Pat or Ken, is we have our budget, but in no place in the budget is there funds, as Jeremy says, now it's a 2-track versus how we did it last time, where it could be some significant cost to the district to do what he has written down there. Budget wise, we would need it in the budget.
We have some funds in the board budget. We saved we didn't delete out what we did for the strategic plan, for example.
Okay, I happen to think about that it would have budgetary impact, so.
Yeah.
It is 7:44. I know there was one more, and again, I am not trying to cut anyone off. I think any question about anything we've discussed tonight, we can continue with. But Pat, I think there was one more thing on the agenda, was to at least discuss a bit about the PAC, if I'm reading this right. And I know we've already discussed a little bit, but is there anything that you wanted to specifically ask or present related to that, Pat?
I did not. It was more about getting the idea of whether the board is thinking November or May. And so I think that would be just to get some confirmation. It sounds like May, but maybe folks can put their hand up if they're thinking May.
Yeah, I think there's the appetite, Pat. Is,
May.
Yep.
I'm thinking May, just because with COVID and everything we've been dealing with, this time has just come up really fast on us. And I'm worried about getting a PAC going, truthfully. So that's another reason I push more for May. I can go back and reinvest the money again that I took out of investments and put into cash for you guys, but at some point, that process, we basically have to have a PAC organized with a chairman and a treasurer at the minimum, so that the funds can be moved over from investment into an active account, and we can activate the PAC at the Secretary of State's office, because we're what they call inactive. And each January I do a filing just to keep us legal, because the last treasurer didn't do that between when we were inactive. So we have to activate ourselves. But like Jeremy says, 6 months ahead of time probably would be adequate to activate us. So probably this fall we'd be looking at more activating, or January at the latest.
Yeah, I would recommend the fall. Like if you are looking to May, but it's always better to be. I mean, you are starting ahead of the game. I'm totally happy to hear you have cash in the bank. That's awesome, and I'm happy to like chat any point in the next couple of months, or Frida, about what I see as like the first steps when we work with PACs. Kind of, you've already named a few of them. You're ahead of it, but happy to spend a little time if you want.
Okay. And it last time was the one time where the board chair and vice chair were actually the PAC chair and treasurer. In the past, it's been citizens that have done that. It has not been board members that have done those activities. They've served on the PAC, but they weren't the officers of the PAC.
And that's typically the right thing, right? So because board members are already doing so much and already out there and doing the lift, they're doing the road show ideally, and it sends a better message to the community if it's just strong community member, a parent, a business leader, whatever, you know, it's a retiree, you know, it's somebody who, or co-chairs type format is better than having board members run it.
I think realistically, we keeping in mind that the city has been so locked down over the last year or more that this summer, people are going to want to be out and getting some life. They are not going to be thinking about working on a bond or anything else. It's just being realistic that we won't be able to, like, you know, bring in people to have a lot of meetings or things like that, I would think, before the fall. But you can start like mapping out a plan and getting together materials and stuff like that. But people are going to be outside as long as we can before the, you know, praying that there won't be a smoke reemergence of wildfires late in the summer. But I think that we just have to plan for that.
Well, I think go ahead, Pat. Was that Pat?
I think it was just an echo, Frida.
I'm thinking if we go ahead and the district gets the bond development and they can work with the district on the preliminary communications that the district will do on explaining what a bond is, those type of things. And then we can get some people slowly. It doesn't mean you have to meet a ton. So make it minimum amount of work through the summer, but at least getting people starting, moving in that direction, starting that communication you want, Donna.
All right, it is 7:50. Kind of as we wrap up here and just be thinking about closure, again, what I'm hearing is the district, if you will, my cabinet, my leadership team, we will take the information we heard tonight, and I will plan to bring a idea concept to Andrea and Sahar for our June board meeting to bring forth the consideration about making a decision about May, so we can formalize. But as we do that, we will also talk about some of that planning that we've been talking about tonight, and try to get as much as that as we can. And again, back to, I think every board from here on out should be updates. There's going to be a bond item that's going to include updates, communication, you know, action steps and kind of commitments. And again, I'm making that up, so I'll have to kind of formalize a bit, but between Pat and I and the rest of the leadership team, we'll put that together and get us started in June. And again, from there, it's monthly, weekly, daily, and we'll backwards plan for May. And again, my hope is well, I shouldn't say that. If the board decides that we look at May, I'm very excited to engage in the work with you and do this on behalf of our district to ultimately communicate what the needs are of our district and provide an opportunity for our community to make a choice. I think it's important for our district, and obviously part of our responsibility is to communicate our needs. So any last questions? Anything that you have? Yes, please.
Just a last comment with June 2. One of those pieces might be what, as Jeremy talked, the district, if you feel you need a consultant to work on the district track and what that cost might be, so the board would know.
Yeah, perfect, Frida. Thank you. I definitely have that as one of the conversations of next steps, right? As we have a conversation at our next board meeting, you know, how do we get support through this process, right? How do we add capacity to our team? I think our board team's amazing, but I think there's need and help there, as you've talked about, Frida, from the PAC side. But I'll again, in all transparency, capacity at the district level, there is a lot going on, has been a lot going on, there still is a lot going on, and I will never make that excuse as an excuse, but I can tell you that we can definitely use help and support, and we want to do it right. We definitely want to do it right. Jeremy, any last thoughts, anything you'd like to add based on the last half an hour conversation that you've been listening to?
No, I think you guys, good questions, and it's great to hear you work through kind of the calendar. I think, in my professional opinion, you are definitely thinking about this the right way in terms of every month. Let's put together a year calendar. Let's take it from this May to next May. I think it gives you most opportunity for success. So I think it's just a smart approach. We would be happy and love to work with. We love our work in Multnomah County, and would be happy to entertain working with David Douglas. It'd be great. So, yeah.
Thank you. Sahar, it's 7:53. We have a few minutes, but I think I'll hand it back to you. And like I said, we can continue to ask questions, but it's up to you where we go from here.
I have one more thing.
Oh, please, Pat. I'm sorry.
Is there anything, I guess, is there anything more with bond? Because mine's more related to budget. No? Okay. So I just wanted to bring something to the board's attention because at the last board meeting, we talked about the ending fund balance being a bit lower than what I had projected. So I did want to bring something else to your attention because as I was problem solving and looking through things, I noticed that I made an error in the revenue projection. So I'm going to be sending you an email tonight explaining that error and what we're looking at to rectify that. So I just don't want you to be caught off guard or surprised, and but I did want you to know. So, and I'll explain more at the next board meeting, but you're welcome to contact me and ask questions or can either, okay? So, and thus the adopted budget that we're gonna bring in is probably gonna be adjusted accordingly. It'll be within budget law, but we will need to make an adjustment, okay? I'm going to turn it back to you.
I just wanted to make a comment too. I almost forgot. I told Ken I was going to bring it up tonight before the meeting ended. Is graduations are coming up. Ken's sending out the information about Fur Ridge and the high school drive-through graduation. Last year's drive-through was it just was planned quickly. It was kind of crazy. Ken and I were the only ones who happened to attend any of it. And it was noted to me by the principal that the staff really recognize that. I'm asking every board member, it's going to be spread out over the day, if they could at least stop by for a half hour. Ken has some ideas because it's more formalized plan this time, but it means a lot to the staff. The parents might not know who you are, but the staff knows who you are, and they appreciate it when we show up at these things, especially with this odd year. They're kind of used to us being at their graduation, and suddenly last year we weren't there. So I think it'd be great if everybody can make a point to try and stop by during that particular day. Thank you.
I'd like that, Frida. Is it possible, Ken, if you guys could send us an official invitation or an email just so I can put it on my calendar?
Yes, Aaron, it's already queued up. I think I sent an email to Donna because she was ahead of me and asked a question, but I do have an email queued up that you'll be receiving tomorrow that has a date and invite and kind of shares a little bit about the run of show, the agenda, how it plays out. But yeah, you'll see an email in your inbox with both Fur Ridge graduation and the high school timeframes and what it will look like, and the hope and request that you can attend and give some virtual high fives to some of our kids.
And Ken, do you want to mention the vaccination clinics? They finalized the high school to have theirs on the 10th. Is it the 10th or the 11th? I'm getting confused with everything. but everything we've told Multnomah County Health, we would get communication on even their sites. So our website's going to be the place to go to get the latest on vaccination clinics and stuff that are being planned in East Portland. So if you can get that word out to people, I got it out at an EPAP meeting last night so that people know, because we have some of the lowest vaccination rates here in Douglas. So we really want to get our different communities, our ethnic communities vaccinated and our students vaccinated too. So, but anyway, you just refer people to our website for vaccination information would be a great way to do it.
Yeah, you'll see a number of communications coming out. What Frida's talking about is over the pandemic and as vaccination started, we've been advocating and lobbying and requesting that we host within our community because we know it is an effort for some of our community members to get to the convention center. With that said, it's kind of when it rains, it pours. We do have opportunity now. There's enough vaccinations and vaccine available that the county is reaching out. It is the 10th, Frida. We have one clinic that we're moving forward with, a vaccination clinic that will be at the high school, be a drive-through clinic. Again, I'm being very brief because I see the time, but this is also something you'll see in one of my updates, but you also see it just in the community communication that will go out. And then we also are looking at one on the 18th, and that one we're looking at hosting at Floyd Light. And then we're also looking at partnering with the county. Is going to have a mobile unit, and we're talking with our elementary schools right now and talking about hosting specific mobile units. And then there's a partnership or communication. The county's planning to host a vaccination site at Walgreens or not Walgreens, excuse me. Walgreens is one of them, but Fabric Depot. The Fabric Depot property, if you know where that property is, on 122nd, in which we're going to partner with and hopefully help as well with that space, just because it's in the heart of our district. But very fast and furious. We will be sharing more communication, but a tremendous thank you to the county for reaching out and being willing to partner with us. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize Frida for continuing to advocate for that. And then also Mary has just been, I think, living all things vaccination and COVID and doing it with a smile and every day bringing new opportunities for our kids and families. So thank you, Mary, for all your work on this. And she could summarize it much, much better. And hopefully we'll have more to share with you at the June meeting.
And just to reiterate, for the county health at Fabric Depot, very low barrier, no insurance. They don't even necessarily need names. They don't care whether you're documented or not. They just want people to get vaccinated. And so they're making it as low barrier as possible for our families. So the way, if we can get that information out to them so they can get vaccinated, if they're concerned about going because of that, that would be great.
Great. And I just wanted to put it out there, and Mary, I can speak to you as well, but I had also made a little video of myself telling the camera why I decided to get vaccinated. If we want board members to do that, I think many of us would be happy to, or if there's also school staff, youth, others, maybe in different languages of I got vaccinated, so should you. I'd be more than happy to help out with that as well. And with that, that's a little off topic, and we talked about a few things here, and I can't believe graduations are coming up, but yes, thank you for that reminder. Really looking forward to seeing our seniors graduate. And with that, do we have any other questions, comments? Maybe not so much about vaccines or graduation, but maybe about the bond. We just decided to talk about a few things there at the end. Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much again, Jeremy, for your time, for all of this information. It was really, really great and thorough. Thank you for everyone's input. I think we all we're in a lot of agreement of what we're looking at, and we'll have plenty of time to plan and campaign accordingly. And so with that, at 8:02 here now on my laptop, we're going to close it out. Jeremy, did you want to add something or?
No, just a thank you for having me. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you all. Take care. Stay safe. Have a good night.